Hello from him,
Richard Moore, and it's hello from her.
Me again, Michelle Monroe. Well, what a week it's been, or a month in fact. It's been really busy. And a lot of people, not just now, but in general, have been asking me where exactly Daddy was born. And he was born in Shoreditch in the East End of London, which made him actually a true Cockney, because you had to be born within the sound of Bow Bells, which of course it's not there anymore. So I don't think you can be a real Cockney now.
Well, no, maybe not. the building that he was born in, though, or certainly lived in back there, is still there. I found it on Google Maps.
It is.
Yes,
it is. But yeah, you can't be born within the sound of the bells anymore. But anyway, a true Cockney, and at the age of 9, the summer, of course, brought with it the reality that war was imminent, and the first school children were evacuated on the 1st of September, which was actually, if I remember rightly, the day that Germany invaded Poland, which was called Operation Pied Piper. Now, Terry, who was first taken to Cornwall, of course, decided immediately he wasn't staying there. And after enduring quite enough of his forced imprisonment, as he felt, he made his own way home, arriving on the doorstep, declaring he wasn't going anywhere. His mum wasn't amused.
I can imagine, yeah. Lead balloon time,
yeah. You know, for him, the kids, it was an exciting world for a young boy, and they'd go on the streets at night and pick up bits of shrapnel as keepsakes. And I mean, on the night the bombs were exploding all around them, the shrapnel was falling like raindrops. It was awful. I mean, incredible. But of course, at the age of 9 and 10, you don't realise the severity, do you?
No.
But Dad's brother Harry, who was only a couple of years older than him, he also returned home briefly. And this time, both Terry, as he was born, Terence Edward Parsons, they were both evacuated to South Luffenham, which, of course, to two small boys, the village was small and boring. But it was another upheaval for Terry. And then he was evacuated several more times. But eventually, in the spring of 45, he went home, kind of knowing his childhood was over, because he was forced to go to work at the age of 14. Kids don't know how good they've got it nowadays.
No, they don't, do they? No, absolutely.
Now listen, this always tickles me, because he was destined to a life of mundane jobs. His first was at the Imperial Tobacco Company, and he started in the factory, as you know, as an offal boy, collecting waste tobacco, sweeping the floor from the cutting machines. And a series of jobs followed. Now listen to this. Office worker, apprentice to a master builder, fireman on the railway line at North Eastern, a plumber's mate, a decorator's mate, a plasterer's mate. But it didn't stop there, Richard. Then it was an electrician, a coalman, a bricklayer, truck driver, curbstone fitter, factory floor sweeper, a stonemason and a milkman and a baker, and even a general factotum in a custard factory. He actually, Daddy claims to have put the heating into Vauxhall at Luton. In the space of a year, he held 53 jobs and detested all of them, of course.
Let's see, I worked laying paving stones and curbstones. I was a fireman with British Rail, before it was British Rail. I worked on the London North Eastern line from King's Cross. And, of course, I was a bus driver. That's about the only thing that people do know, because it was the big publicity thing, the singing bus driver. Then I was a mate to practically everybody in the building trade, plumbers, plasterers, slaters, tilers and bricklayers, anybody. At one stage I helped put the heating into Vauxhalls at Luton. I was in the heating engineering business. And, everything, I was a jack of all trades, master of none. I was just an odd jobber, I suppose. I was just a labourer, that was all, basically.
I went all through all sorts of things. I was a milkman, a baker, you name it, I've done it, plasterer's mate. Anything that didn't tax my brain too much, or my physical strength too much, because I'm basically a very lazy person.
Yeah. I wonder. I just wondered whether that's where his smoking first came about. Did it start at the age of 14 with him working in a tobacco factory?
All the kids smoked back then, Oh. I mean, it was a different era, and people can poo-poo and this, but it was, you remember John Wayne in the films with the cigarette and Betty Davis. It was glamorous as such, and of course the war. it was advertised that was your pastime, your pleasure, and it was cheap, and cheerful. So, yes, they all smoked, but something he loved a bit more than smoking was singing.
Well, yeah.
And he first sang with a band when he was only a teenager at the Tufnell Park Palais in North London. And Bill Evans' band gave him a regular night spot on a Saturday night. He had to sing 2 songs for 10 bob a night. You remember one of the songs he sang?
Oh, I think the first one I think he's known to have sung was "I Wonder Who's Kissing Her Now."
Well done.
Yeah, that's let's see, written by Harold Orlob, lyrics by William M. Huff and Frank Adams. Perry Como, I think, is probably who we first heard. I think Perry Como was a big influence in the early days, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
And it's a funny old song, actually, because I was looking it up this afternoon, and it was first recorded by a music hall comedian called Billy Murray in 1909, and it was actually written as a sort of semi-comic song with him singing about previous girlfriends. This guy was a bit of a philanderer, and he was wondering what had happened to all the previous girlfriends that he'd had. And then Perry Como in 1947 turned it into this wistful ballad of long lost love. But actually, if you listen to the original song, it's not about that at all.
I wonder who's kissing her now, wonder who's teaching her now, wonder who's looking into her eyes, breathing sighs, telling lies. I wonder who's buying the wine.
But it was weird because that went to the number 2 position, but he also recorded it again in May 47, which was the same year that he did the first version. So quite know that.
I don't know. Maybe he switched labels, or sometimes, and I don't know, this happened with White Christmas. A record was so popular that they made so many copies of it. The stampers that they used to make the records actually wore out. And so he had to go in and record it again, because this was the days before tape. And so they were recording stuff direct to disc. And sometimes, yes, the stampers that actually made the records wore out. Bing Crosby definitely had to go in and record White Christmas again. So, yeah, I suppose it could have happened to Perry Como. I don't know.
No, it was just an interesting tidbit. And,
yeah.
Of course, someone once said to me that they had an old tape recording of Daddy singing that from those days, but of course it never came to fruition, which is a shame because he used to also go to the Boston pub, and that used to have a huge lounge at the back which housed a resident trio. It held about, 250 people, and he went there every night to sing, and he sang another song there called "There's a Tree in the Meadow." Remember that one?
Yeah, well, it's only just Dorothy Squires. And that's a funny little tune.
It was popular, wasn't it?
It's also recorded by Margaret Whiting. And the strange thing there's a little strange story about that, actually. Margaret Whiting's recording was done in the middle of a musician's strike. So it was all a bit of subterfuge. The orchestral track was apparently recorded in Europe, and then the track was taken back to America, and they told her to come to the studio and see if she could sing this song that they were looking at, and they taped her singing it without necessarily her knowledge, and then released it. That's how the story goes. I don't know how true it is, but that's how the story goes.
There's a tree in the meadow with a stream drifting by, and carved upon that tree I see, I love you till I die.
And then it became quite a big hit for her in America, but all done with somewhat of a. I'll start that again.
Put your teeth in. Put your teeth in.
All recorded
Get
with
them
somewhat.
off the dog.
Woof.
But do you remember that happened to Daddy? He went in to record supposedly as samples for, you'll remember the name, Dreary Songs.
Oh, Merrick Farron, the
Yes.
Ghost of Your Past. And
he
Quite
released
Possibly.
those without Daddy's knowledge.
Yes.
And yes, Daddy took him to court on one, but it was too late. It was already out.
I know. Well, at least it stopped because there were more songs, and we've heard quite a lot of those songs, haven't we? Since because
And I wish I could release them, but they're just
I
awful.
don't know. They are appalling. He recorded a whole series, which is obviously how he met Merrick Farron in the first place. He recorded a whole series of shows for BBC transcriptions to be sent around the world. And Merrick Farron included, I would say a good 60% of the stuff is actually original Merrick Farron numbers that are so dreary you wouldn't believe.
Dirty, aren't they?
Yeah,
Really?
and I mean the whole thing, every single song he sings on that series, which survives but is just not really any good.
Listen,
nothing wrong with your dad.
We've never used them.
No, nothing wrong with your dad's voice. It's just that even the songs that he sings on there, even the standards that he sings, have got such dreary arrangements that you think, God, the listener would be half asleep through the middle of the first number. They're appalling.
I tell you, but it's interesting that the two songs we've just talking about, I Wonder Who's Kissing Her Now and A Tree in the Meadow, they were very popular at the time. And of course, Dad had to know the song. The bands had to know the song. So,
Yeah.
He went with what was out there. But he also went to the Nag's Head and sang Daddy's Little Girl, which I'd never heard of.
No, well, I hadn't until I was looking this up this afternoon, and it was a hit for the Mills Brothers in 1950.
Oh, right.
But it is sort of schmaltz on a stick, really, that song. It's it's fairly, stick your finger down your throat time. But it has actually been recorded more recently. Michael Bublé did a version of it more recently, would you believe?
Really? Is it any good?
10, 15 years ago? Well, I mean, it's
No, I don't mean Mike Bublé, I mean the song.
not really. As I say, it's still, even under Bublé's management, it's fairly sick-making. But there you go. But that's my opinion, of course. Other
Is it
people's
schmaltzy?
mileage may vary. Yeah, it is really. But still, there you go. I'll include a little clip of it here, just so people can hear a little bit of just.
Yeah,
what it's
I'd like to hear it myself.
You're the end of the rainbow, my pot of gold. You're daddy's little girl to have and hold a precious.
If something was popular, that's what people wanted to hear. So that's what your dad sang,
Yeah, but the other two I've heard of, so they kind of survived the test of time in one way.
Yeah.
But I just not familiar with that track at all. And to be honest, I've never looked it up.
Well, I'd never heard of it until this afternoon. So it's there you go.
Well, his main love was music. And of course, his childhood years were filled listening to the magic that emanated from radio, especially Radio Luxembourg, which is where he was listening to Perry Como, of course, and Sinatra. And by the time he enlisted in the army at 17, he was completely hooked. He used to listen to Peter Potter on Voice of America through the American Forces Network. And you remember what I was telling you about Perry Como?
Yeah.
That's where we first heard the song, remember?
Prisoner of Love, of course.
Yes, which of course he recorded.
He did indeed, and he sang it on BBC Radio as well. He sang it on Saturday Club, so it was definitely a favourite of his. And Prisoner of Love, I mean, that was quite an old song even by Perry Como standards, but still not as old as I Wonder Who's Kissing Her Now. But Prisoner of Love was from 1931 by Russ Columbo and Clarence Gaskill.
Right.
With lyrics by Leo Robbins. And so it was sort of a minor hit for them back then, but revived by Perry Como in 1945, which is obviously where your dad heard it. And so 45 is fairly early for Perry Como as well. But it's a song that still gets revived from time to time. In fact, sort of, I don't know, sort of 15, 20 years ago, even Cyndi Lauper, of all people, recorded a version of it for a film soundtrack. But there you go. These things keep coming around, don't they?
The guy that got me interested in singing, much to the surprise of everybody in latter years, was not Frank Sinatra, it was Perry Como. And I had a Perry Como record when I was about 14, which really knocked me out, called Prisoner of Love. And Perry Como has always been, to me, as a good singer, tonally, was Perry Como.
Well, luckily we've got. Oops, hang on, I'm destroying the studio here.
That's fair enough.
Luckily, we've got Dad's rendition of Prisoner of Love, But another one that was weird. So the night before he actually enlisted in the army, he was encouraged by his friends, and several pints he took to the stage at his local dance hall, which was the Boston again, and to his sister's horror and amazement, because she'd never heard him. As he was going to stay the night in Tottenham Court Road, because that's where they put the troops up, Daddy'd invited Alice, his sister, and his brother Reg, for a farewell drink. Now, I don't know whether you remember this, but his nickname in those days was Bowie, which of course there was a Bowie knife, but I'm not sure how he got that nickname,
Right.
But they all went to the toilet, as girls as such too, and then they sort of heard this lyrics of "The Ring Your Mother Wore."
Oh, yes.
And they loved it, and so they came out to hear it properly and realised that people had actually stopped dancing and were listening to an unknown in this pub when it was Daddy.
Yeah.
And that was the first time she'd heard him. And apparently he sang the song because it was one of his mother's favourites.
Yeah, it is a fairly ancient song. I first came across this one when I was researching The Boy from Shoreditch, the audio special we made, which is available to listen to on YouTube, by the way. And
yeah, all 4 parts.
Yes, all 4 parts, still there. And it dates back to the 1920s, written by somebody called N. Allen. I haven't been able to find out what the N stood for.
Nobody.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these songs that, the Irish really have taken to their hearts, and a lot of Irish artists over the years have covered it. And it was revived and made very popular again in the 1970s by Foster and Allen. I don't know whether that Allen had any relationship to the original Allen, spelt the same, but still. But funny thing is, once again, I looked this up again this afternoon, and I typed it into Google, and searches on Google now have AI answers to things. And it came up with a whole list of facts about the song, including recorded by Matt Monro, which is very interesting. So I think Google AI has been listening to The Boy from Shoreditch and has somehow thought that he actually recorded the song, because how would it know that it's got anything to do with your dad other than from that show? So there you go. That's AI creeping into all the cracks of everything. Go on.
Unless, of course, he did record it and we just don't know
Well,
it.
that's also possible. So, if anybody out there has
you get your Sherlock Holmes hat on.
has an old tape or an old disc or anything of any of these songs that we happen to talk about today. If anyone, well, actually, I've got a recording of that up in the loft. I thought they'd had that. But no, we've never heard, apart from, I think, in an interview, your dad sang one line of I Wonder Who's Kissing Her Now. But apart from that, we've got none of these. So if you've got one, let us know.
And it doesn't matter if it's on old reel-to-reels, because we've got the equipment, even if you don't.
Yes, yeah, I can cope with more or less anything, apart from perhaps wax cylinders. But I don't think he goes back quite as far as that. So that's something.
But the night when he sang that song was the night, as I say, before he enlisted, and his mum gave him a St. Christopher's, which was the traveller's sort of lucky charm, and he never took it off,
Right.
His whole life. I've still got it, obviously.
Well, good, yeah.
But yeah, for safe travel, she gave it to him.
Did you want to be anything?
A layabout I wanted to be. I wanted to find the easiest way of earning a living without working, so I went in the army.
I wanted to learn a trade, and it seemed to be about the only way that I could go about doing it. And my mother didn't want me to join, but she didn't stand in my way. And she signed the form, and I joined. I I went in when I was about 17 and a half years old.
But I think the most momentous moment in my life came when I actually joined the army, but without being called to join. When I was 17 and a half. I'm not going to tell you what year that was, but it was when I was 17 and a half. And I did 2 years in England in the army, and...
I was a regular.
You were a regular?
Yeah, joined in 19...
Shut my mouth and look at your pension.
Yeah, I was joined in 48.
Good God, I didn't know that.
I was in the Army. I served 2 years in UK, and lucky me, I spent 3 years in Hong Kong.
And of course, he joined the REME, which stands for Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, as Craftsman Parsons, and stationed in England. At first, he passed his driving test, then a mechanics course, and then an advanced driver's exam, so he was upgraded to an instructor. Now, sit down for this, because he received the princely sum of 10 shillings every week, with 8 and 6 used at the NAFI for essentials like, boot polish, Blanco, Brasso, toothpaste expected, and 1 and 6 left to be squandered at will. So for the princely sum, he was eventually required to rough it in exotic locations. Well, Blandford was one, Blackdown was another. And he always said to me, it seemed to have its own rain cloud permanently tethered above him.
Tell me, was there a particular reason he wanted to become an engineer?
Well, as he always said, he didn't know how to do anything else. He hated the job. All those jobs he did.
Yeah,
he hated
quite.
every one of them. And, of course, he could do this outside, and he was left to his own devices a lot. I mean, he trained at Bovington, which was in Dorset, but they'd move him around, and he spent time doing LAD work at Purnham Downs, Blackdown in Mill Hill, and Andover, actually, as a support to the territorial units. So, he had a lot of scope to travel, albeit in England, but, he stayed at White, Bridging Camp it was, I think. And they were scattered, a lot of them, around Stonehenge, because the ground, he said, was good for tank training. And of course, he was promoted to Lance Corporal, but he lost his stripe a week later because he continued to ignore his curfews.
Yeah, from what I've heard of your dad in his army days, that doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
Well, after Daddy died, I applied for his army record, which did take quite a long time. He's just in jankers all the time, and he's demoted so many times, lost his pay. In fact, like when he was at White Bridging Camp, he went on stage of the Pier bandstand, and he was 17 and a half in uniform then. Of course, he went in a talent competition called the Carol Levis Discoveries and came second to a blind pianist doing the Warsaw Concerto. And he won a table thermometer, which he eventually took home to his mum.
Well, how useful is that? I don't know. It's amazing. It's amazing the number of people who've appeared on Carol Levis Discoveries, I mean, even people like John Lennon and Paul McCartney went on Carol Levis, amazing, because he not only did he obviously travel around the country doing all these things, but he later brought it to the radio and TV as well. So,
Yes, she was very popular, wasn't she?
Absolutely, yeah. He actually caroled with a double L. It's a him.
Oh, is it a man?
Yeah, it's a him. It's a man. Yeah, Carol. It's with the double L.
Oh,
so yes.
Apologies. No, it shows you what I know, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
I've got it spelt with a double L. I just didn't know it was a man's name.
Ah, right. Yes. Yeah. You don't come across many Carols, male Carols, but there was a few.
I've never heard of another one.
There was Carol Gibbons, who was a band leader in the 1940s. Right. Carol Gibbons was the only other a male Carol that I know of. But,
no, in fact, Lewis Carroll, which is an author. I know it's a surname, but what I'm saying is I don't know of any other Carol, so there you go.
Yeah, there
talking about jankers, I mean, his hut and kit inspection never got good results, so his leave was cancelled for a whole week. And then he had to go outside and cut the grass with a knife. That was his punishment. I mean, he was so often in trouble in the army as he went AWOL. And his sister Alice and his mum would often have the military police knocking on the door demanding to see him, until Alice, who was really fiercely protective of Terry, found out from a soldier friend that they had no right of entry. So at that point, she'd stand up to them and refuse them access. Mind you, it didn't stop him getting into trouble. On one occasion, he was marched up in front of the officer commanding his unit and sentenced to 14 days jankers, which for anyone that doesn't know the term is sort of their prison, you know, and a £3 penal deduction, which at that time equals more than a week's pay. I mean, it was harsh, you know, and he couldn't leave camp during the period, and he had to report to the guardroom 4 times a day in full kit and spend the evening slaving away in the tin room of the mess. And the tin room wasn't pleasant. I mean, he had to scrub and clean those cooking utensils, which were covered in burnt food, such as all that sort of grilled-in porridge. But the pain was eased because a third of his billet was also on jankers at the time, as they'd all been late returning from a 36-hour pass and regarded as absent without leave. Oh. And there was another indiscretion when he was living at Mill Hill, which was near his home. And for that, he was awarded 29 days detention and forfeited 36 days pay.
Ouch.
Yes. That's not good, is it?
No.
But when I got his army records, I was really chuffed to have got them because I also applied for his bus work, if you like, employment record, which I never got. They couldn't trace him. But the army one was really eye-opening because I didn't realise how naughty he was. I mean, he always said that he enlisted in the army because there was a guy after him for stealing his woman, and he thought it was an easy way out. I mean, he loved the army. He really did. It helped sort of shape him, you know. But he requested an overseas posting on entry to the army, and after 2 years, he was finally posted to Hong Kong for 3 years as a mechanic and tank instructor. So he kind of got his wish. And he flew to Singapore October 50, and then was boarded one of the HM troop carriers, the Delaware, to Hong Kong. I don't know how many days that would have taken. No. I mean, the Korean War had just broken out, so the army had sent the first batch of REME soldiers out there, and Terry was among the second batch, and he was there as a standby for replacement. But as I say, he was there several years, so that was probably one of the highlights of his young life, you know?
Absolutely. And that sounds...
Yeah,
that sounds like a good place to stop. And perhaps we could look at the Hong Kong years in next month's podcast.
That's a good idea, actually.
Yes. And so that'll probably do for now. We've probably bored you for long enough. And so, as we always say, if you have any stories or you have any questions or you have any rare material that you think, oh, they're bound to have that, well, as you've heard this afternoon, it's possible we haven't.
You might have it, but you might have a different version.
Well, absolutely. This is also true. Yeah. I mean, there's some things that come to us sometimes that you think, well, I wouldn't even know that was ever recorded. There was a lovely person who, I think they found your brother on tour one day and said, I've got this. And it was a recording of your dad doing Summer Season in Bournemouth, I think. You know, I mean, who'd have thought that there would even be a recording? I mean, it's a good quality recording as well, made by the house engineer. So you never know what could be hiding in a cupboard.
The spookiest thing of all was that in live shows, Daddy used to sing My Funny Valentine to Mum, her favourite song. Anyway, I got various emails and letters and stuff when I was researching for the book. And this guy had mentioned that Dad had done some recordings for a company.
Ready Tune.
Ready Tunes, yeah.
Ready Tune, yes.
Yeah, and I'd never heard of them. Anyway, you put your detective hat on, and off we went, and then finally wrote to them and said, do you have anything under... And we gave them a whole list of names that Daddy was...
And the different spellings as well,
Spellings, different names that he was recorded under. Remember Terry Fitzgerald?
Oh, boy, yeah, I'd forgotten about that one, yeah. Certainly remember Al Jordan as well, yeah.
Anyway, they wrote back and they said, yes, they did have something in their archives. Then sadly, of course, their archives had just been sent to be digitally transferred. So we had to wait over 6 months.
Yeah.
And they finally sent me a listening copy. And I thought, oh, this is going to be toot, I know it, but at least we can hear it. And the first track on it was My Funny Valentine. And I tell you, I had shivers up my spine because, one, he always loved singing it to Mummy. Second of all, he never officially recorded it. And third of all, it arrived on the day of the 14th of February.
I remember it. Yeah, I mean that was spook. That was strange, really, wasn't it?
I burst into tears, and there was about another 8 or 9 tracks on it, which were
there was
all
quite a lot.
decent.
And we put most of them out on Matt Uncovered, didn't we?
Yeah,
And
we
the,
did.
The Rare Monroe. So yes, it was a
But
good
I mean,
find.
That probably took all in all 9 months, to
absolutely.
track down, get them, and then say to the company, can we use them far-de-far? But to have that one track means just so much to me, and I just wish Mum had been alive still to know about it.
Yeah.
And to hear it again, it would have been lovely, but sadly not the case. But yeah, spooky things have happened.
Indeed. Absolutely.
So keep your nose to the ground, listeners. We're always interested in hearing from you. And don't forget to send a message or a text or an email even, and let us know any questions, anything you want to know or don't want to know.
Yes, you can contact us via the Matt Monroe forum, via the website, via Matt's Facebook page, or at writing to pod@mattmonroe.com. And I got it right this time.
I was going to say, bravo.
pod@mattmonroe.com. I know, it had to happen one day. Yeah. They heard all the outtakes last time.
I did laugh.
3 or 4, I can't remember what number of podcasts were on, but the previous 3 or 4 of those, I did cut out all my mistakes, but there were plenty of them trying to get pod@mattmonroe.com down.
Don't push it up.
Yeah, don't say it again. Okay, then. So we'll say goodbye from both of us, and we'll see you next
month.
Bye-bye.
Bye.